Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Welcome to another episode of From Lab to Launch by Qualio, where we spotlight the people, technologies, and strategies reshaping life sciences. I'm Meg, your host, and today we're joined by Dr. Les Enterline, Senior Vice President and Global Head of Functional Service Partnerships at PPD, part of Thermo Fisher Scientific. With decades of experience across clinical research, Les has helped redefine how biopharma companies structure and scale their development teams through what is known as the FSP model, a flexible outsourcing approach that's gaining traction as sponsors face increasing pressure to deliver trials faster, leaner, and with more adaptive designs. As clinical complexity grows and internal teams get stretched thin, FSPs are helping organizations scale specialized expertise while maintaining oversight, quality, and operational control. Under Les's leadership, PPD has become one of the industry leaders in offering hybrid and fit-for-purpose models that blend the best of traditional CROs services with strategic resourcing. In today's conversation, we'll explore how functional partnerships are evolving, how sponsors are rethinking outsourcing to meet modern challenges, and where the future of trial delivery is headed. Les, thank you so much for joining our podcast today. For those unfamiliar with the term, what exactly is a functional service provider, FSP model, and how does it differ from traditional full service outsourcing in clinical trials?
So, Meg, you essentially said what FSP is. It is functional service provider, sometimes referred to as functional service partnerships or functional service partnership solutions. They're typically provided by the same agencies that provide FSO, which is full service operations. The difference with FSP is there are a couple of different models related to pricing. Typically in FSP, we're working in client systems and processes, and our staff is working more directly with the client. They're embedded with the client, depending on whether we're working in a unitized partial FTE or full FTE, FTE referring to full-time equivalent. So we're defining the acronyms here. Where in FSO, the client is looking to have a clinical research organization run their study. Now, that doesn't mean that there is an oversight by the client, but pretty much they are saying, conduct this study, keep us informed, use your talent and staff, how you need to use your talent and staff, and then we'll have regular check-ins, et cetera, and oversight. In FSP, the staff would actually be following the direction of the client and meeting the timelines of the client. So we're providing a service, and the service is people with subject matter expertise and knowledge in that specific function or category that the client is looking to reach for FSP services.
Great. Thanks for explaining that, Les. And we're seeing more sponsors turn to FSPs for flexibility and scalability, especially as trials are becoming more complex and global. What's driving that shift more than ever now?
So I think some of it is complexity. Some of it is just the clients or sponsors looking for ways to have greater control and greater flexibility. So, when I was at a sponsor, your pipelines kind of ebb and flow, and so being able to have a core set of capabilities that are your staff, and then to supplement that staff as your pipeline is experiencing a peak, or recognizing that you're able to say to a provider, hey, we're going to start to see this particular indication or product line dropping off. And so we're going to begin to ramp down the needs. It just allows a completely different flex model. So some of it's economic, some of it is in response to the ICH E6R3, where there is more need for clients or sponsors to have greater oversight. And so this does allow that greater oversight. But I think clients are trying to look at the best, or sponsors are trying to look at the best way to flex their resources. Do they want to keep their internal resources focused on, high priority projects and supplement their bandwidth with FSP versus using an FS model for maybe less priority? Or what I'm also seeing is that many clients are looking to capitalize on the expertise of the CRO in new indications where they may not yet have the subject matter expertise inside their organization. They're using FSO model, maybe in that case. Now, we have some clients that are relying on us in that situation to provide that subject matter expertise from a drug development physician through an FSP model and through study managers in an FSP model that actually are bringing that expertise in-house and helping to train up their internal organizations. Now, many would not see that as what was the core traditional FSP of ClinOps in years past. So I think what we're seeing is a shift definitely in the marketplace of more blending. And we're seeing that in certain categories or certain services, clients are saying, hey, we are only going to do an FSP model for biostats, for medical writing, for data management, independent of whether we are going to run the study internally or we're going to work with multiple CRO partners across our portfolio. We will always use one particular FSP provider for our biostats, data management, pharmacovigilance, medical writing, and some even are looking at that from a total ClinOps perspective. So again, it gets back to control, it gets back to efficiencies that they can drive and streamlining the process, but it also is looking at how can they stretch those research dollars further by not holding on to staff during those peaks and troughs, but partnering really closely and really working on that resource management with an FSP provider.
Yeah, that's so important and so interesting that FSPs have found kind of a niche along the spectrum of product development. That's great.
Yes.
Thermo Fisher and PPD recently published insights on the rising interest in hybrid FSP or full service models. In your view, what are the ideal use cases for this blended approach?
Well, I've moved away from calling it hybrid because hybrid's kind of a generic term. And I really think, as I said, it's a mixed model approach. It's to me that the client sponsor is looking to pull the right levers related to their organization. So they may have really strong internal strengths in a particular function, and in another function, they may not be as strong. That could be because they lost some key personnel. It could be that they moved into a new indication. I just think what we're seeing is the sponsors are basically saying, we're going to do some traditional FSO. We're likely going to do some traditional FSP, but we're also going to do something in between. And we may pull that lever on a particular project because we think it's the best way for us to advance our pipeline forward and to be ensured around quality and continuity. And it's really a mixed model, but what we're seeing is it's bespoke for each client. There isn't like one book you're pulling off a shelf and it's giving you a recipe that's going to fit every single sponsor's needs. And that's what I think we're trying to ensure, is that we're demonstrating that agility and flexibility for our sponsors, and understanding what their true needs are, and making sure that we're responding with a flexible model that makes sense and checks all the boxes that they need checked.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are really helping sponsor companies prioritize talent access, that delivery speed, and that oversight. How are they doing that when they're evaluating FSP partnerships today, and what's changed in sponsor expectations?
I don't know that expectations have changed, other than everyone is looking for speed, efficiencies, need to drive quality, and there's no one in the industry, probably not just our industry, there's no one in the industry today that's not trying to do that in a more efficient or cost-effective model. In addition, they're not just trying to drive all of those parameters, efficiencies, quality, speed, cost savings, without the understanding that new technologies are emerging on a daily basis that will be utilized in the clinical research space to aid in that, and therefore allow us to maybe not spend less money on research, but actually be able to redirect some of the dollars to starting newer projects, or more importantly, maybe getting to answers around projects that need to stop sooner, because we're getting earlier signs quicker and we're able to analyze the data quicker. And by allowing people to use technology, we're actually able to stretch what that human is able to do across the number of projects. So I think that's a pretty consistent message across the industry. So everyone's trying to do the same thing.
Yeah,
which is good, right? Yeah. We're not juxtaposed, but I think, yes, cost is one of the parameters, but it's not the only parameter, right?
Yeah, and so interesting that just as important it is to bring a drug to market quickly, it's just as important to figure out what drugs aren't going to be able to be brought to market quickly to save money and redirect it, as you said. One common concern is that FSP models might create silos or reduce cohesion across a trial. How do you ensure quality, compliance, and seamless collaboration when operating in that functional model?
So I think that's a multifaceted question, Meg, in that it depends, are you working in a traditional FSP FSO model, or are you working in a mixed model? So if we start with some projects, the client is moving in an FSO model, they're talking to them about the FSO. Like, we certainly have project managers or study managers that are working in clients and managing different projects for them, which could include an FSO project. But if you think about traditional clin ops in an FSP model, we're following clients' SOPs and process. Those processes are there to ensure quality and cohesive running of their programs. And I just think this is the staff that's doing the work. When I was in industry and I had FSP and FSO and I had internal talent, as a leader, the most important thing to me, and I tell my clients this all the time, is that the stakeholders, whether they're internal or external, do not know any difference. That it doesn't matter where someone's actually getting a paycheck from. Everyone is aligning around the priorities of the program, the priorities of the sponsor, and they're representing the sponsor as any of their employees represent them. To me, that's the win-win. And I think everyone in the industry today recognizes that there are lots of different models being utilized. And as long as we have the right subject matter expertise and we're delivering the right quality and expertise and excellence to the study, it really shouldn't matter what's the model. We should just be executing around the best model and ensuring that there's strong communication, that there's transparency, honesty, and candor across the spectrum. So if somebody has stubbed their toe or stumbled a bit, we're not holding that in. We're just bringing it to the forefront. What do we need to do to lift you back up, to support you and ensure success? And so I think that's true whether you're working in an FSO model, you're working in a fully internalized model, you're working in an FSP model, a mixed model, or a staff augmentation model. It's around ensuring that people are properly trained, that there's strong communication, and that people are very open, honest, and candid about what's going well, but also what needs improvement. So, we have to face the challenges. It's clinical research. There's going to be some hurdle we need to overcome. It's a given.
Yeah. Sounds like teamwork makes the dream work there, Les, in any kind of model.
Yes, indeed.
Well, lovely. Les, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions or challenges sponsors face when they're exploring FSPs for the first time? And what advice would you give them?
So I think sometimes people think it's a lesser talent that's working in FSP. I actually would counter that it takes someone with entrepreneurial skills, because we're picking them up and setting them into a different environment to work. It takes that self-starter mentality. It takes really strong soft skills to be a successful employee in FSP. And a successful employee means that we're meeting the client's expectations, right? And we're delivering that service. So I think one of the misconceptions that I try to overcome is that it takes someone with less experience. I think it's counter. I also think the client expects individuals to have the same kind of level of years of global experience, years of working in a particular function. They expect the employees or the individuals providing the service, they expect them to have the indication experience, to have the knowledge and expertise. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hiring them, right? They wouldn't be looking for us to provide that service. So I also think the other thing that I commonly come against is with lots of people can think about FSP only as the traditional FTE staff augmentation type model. And today, I think, as I've said, it's evolved. There are instances where it's a unitized approach, a partial FTE approach, a full FTE approach, or a combination of all three. Especially as if you think about biotech as their portfolio, maybe starting with 1 or 2 studies, but they know that in 6-9 months, they're actually going to have a larger. It's better to begin with individuals that are going to be able to stay with them. And what I find is many of my team love being embedded in the client. Within a partnership, we have 95% retention rates. Employees feel that they're sometimes a bit closer to the client and to the actual product and the potential product's indications when they're working in an FSP environment versus an FSO environment. And then the final thing that I always tell people, because it's hugely important to me around career development, is, if you're working within a CRO organization and you've only worked in traditional FSO and you've only worked for a CRO, by stepping into FSP for a period of time, you're getting to walk in the shoes of a biotech or a biopharma and understand how they think, what drives them, what are the questions they ask, how are their priorities aligned with what we think the priorities are? How are the priorities different? So I think it's a good opportunity to get that experience, but not to have to necessarily leave the organization that you're already part of and really enjoy being part of.
Yeah, that sounds very rewarding to get to be so close to a project and invested in it, and also have the opportunity to see the big picture and maybe get that practice before you set out on your own and be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yes.
Les, looking ahead 5 to 10 years, where do you see the FSP model evolving further, and what role will it play in shaping the future of clinical operations and sponsor CRO relationships?
Yeah. So I wish I had that crystal ball. What I would say is the only constant is change, and that I feel it will continue to evolve. Do I think sponsors are going to move fully to an FSP model? Not across the continuum of their entire study development portfolio. Do I think that there will be some leveling out of the best places to drive efficiencies with both an FSO approach and an FSP approach, as well as what's important to fully keep internally that maybe is supplemented with FSP? But I would just say simply it'll continue to evolve as the industry evolves.
Yeah, and as technology evolves with it, so will everything else.
Yes.
Well, lovely, Les. And to wrap up on a personal note, we always like to ask this last question of our guests. If we ran into you at a bookstore, in what section would we find you browsing?
Wherever Lee Child's and John Grisham books are. So
those mystery novels.
Mystery novels with a little bit of thriller component, or in the history section.
History section. Well, lovely. It's been a great chat today, Les. I've learned a lot about FSP models. Where can our listeners go to follow along and learn more about you?
That's a great question. I'm on LinkedIn. They're welcome to email me at les.enterline@thermofisher.com. And certainly if you see me speaking at an industry conference, I'm happy to chat anytime. Feel free to reach out.
Great. Well, I hope our paths cross in 2026, and thank you so much for joining us, Les.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.